we're live.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 9th Human Rights Commission meeting. We will start off by doing introductions. So how this usually works is introduce yourself. If you would like, you can share your pronouns. And if you're a member of the commission or know what ward you live in, you can share that. And then we popcorn it to someone else. So I can start. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a member of the Human Rights Commission. I live in Ward 4, and I'm gonna pass it on to Greg.
Well, thank you. Nice introduction. I'm new, although I'm a former member of the commission, I was newly appointed. So my name's Greg Azure. I currently am a recruiter for ODHS. I'm the tribal senior recruiter, so I work with the tribes. But it's nice to be here. I'm anxious to roll up my sleeves and contribute where I can. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it to, I don't see who else is here. So I don't, if you could help me with that, Kelsey, just popcorn it over to somebody else.
Of course. Let's popcorn it to Hope.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hope Strayer. I'm a member of the commission. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Ward 1. And I am going to popcorn it over to Lisa.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Listening in this evening. I'm fairly new to the city of Salem, have relocated from Oregon City, where I served in different commissions and boards with the city of Oregon City. Interested in getting involved here in Salem. I'm currently working as a grant writer for the local YMCA. We're open, come visit us. We would love to have you join or come for a tour. So just wanted to, I've watched a couple of these meetings, but just would like to get involved. So thank you for the invitation and having me here. So I'll popcorn to Kelly.
It's always jarring. I'm never expecting it to be me. Hi, I'm Kelly. I work in the budget office, so I look at lots of spreadsheets during the day. A couple of you I've met before. I have filled in with Gretchen. The work you guys do is really important and near and dear to me. So I am glad I'm always sad when Gretchen's gone, but I'm also kind of happy because I get to sit in and hear about the great work you guys do. So pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to hear what's going on. Forgot about the popcorn. I'm going to send it to Kathy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Ostrand-Plunge. I'm a member of the commission. I live in South Salem. My pronouns are she, her, and I'll pass it to Krista.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on Krista's voice. Forgot to turn on your voice. Hi, this is Krista Gallagher. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm a member of the HRC. I live in Ward 4, and I will pass it to Hamandi.
Hi, my name is Hamadi. I am a commission member. I live in Ward 5. And I will pass it over to Ezekiel.
Hi everyone, my name is Zeke Drucker. I use they them pronouns. I work with Madi, who told me this would be an interesting thing to do. So I am here for that reason. I look forward to getting to know all of you and maybe seeing if you guys need help or anything. So thank you. I will pass it to, I'm sorry, I forgot he's gone already. Lieutenant Debbie Aguilar.
Sure, yeah, I haven't gone yet. Hi, I'm Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with the Salem Police Department, and I am the liaison between the Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And I think, Laura, I think you're maybe the last one who hasn't gone.
I think so. I'm Laura Fouts. I am a member of the Human Rights Commission. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Ward 3.
Great. This is Kelsey. So moving forward, it's helpful for the interpreters to state your name before you start speaking. So let's do that. All right, my cat is in the way of my agenda. All right. Well, I'm so happy that y'all are here. We are going to move forward. We didn't get any written public comments, but does anyone have any comments? Public comments right now. We'll open the floor for that. All right, this is Kelsey. Seeing none, we're going to move forward with the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the agenda from the for today's meeting?
I move to approve. Oh, this is Amadi. I move to approve it.
All right, Amadi has moved. Is there a second?
This is Laura Fouts. I second.
Great, thank you, Laura. All right. All right. If you vote to approve the agenda, if you approve, raise your hand. All right. Great. It has passed. All right. And now we have to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. That is October 12th. Is there a motion to approve the October 12th minutes?
This is Kathy. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there a second?
This is Greg. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Greg. All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand. Beautiful. Great. Thank you. All right. Moving on to our action and discussion items. We're going to start with our bias crime update. Lieutenant Aguilar, do you have anything for us?
This is Debbie. Yes, I have just one thing. We just had one bias incident that was reported on October 10th in South Salem. It was a resident, or I guess a homeowner, reported finding some anti-religious type writing on his car. It was like written in dirt or, you know, he had some kind of material over his car, like dirt or dust. And there was anti-religious writing in that dirt. So it didn't cause any damage, but it was concerning to him. So he called and reported it. There isn't any suspect information at this time. So it was documented as a bias incident. And the person was provided with the phone number or contact information for the state bias crime hotline. And that's all I had for this month's reporting.
This is Kelsey. Thank you, Lieutenant. Are there any comments or questions for Lieutenant Aguilar? All right, seeing none. Let's see. Overview, bias crime and bias incidents. Let's see. Lieutenant, is that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Once I start sharing it, I don't know if I'll be able to see or not. So I might have to have you tell me if you see it. Let's see.
Yes.
So, okay, perfect. All right. So Gretchen because she wasn't here this month, she really wanted to make sure that you had something to listen to that would hopefully be of interest and valuable. And so she asked if I would present on bias crimes and bias incidents. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about hate speech, and I'll talk a little bit about how the update to Chapter 97 affects bias crime, especially SRC bias violations. The last time I presented on this to the Human Rights Commission was back in 2018. So there's been, I don't think anyone on the commission now was here in 2018 except for Gretchen and I. So hopefully this will be new information, or at least you'll find it a little bit valuable. So let me make sure I can. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the law. And so I just want to disclose that I'm certainly not a lawyer. I'm not a district attorney. So when I talk to you about different, we might talk about some different cases. I'm doing it on as representing myself as an attorney. So there are probably always different opinions depending on the case scenario. So just to put that out there. And then also each case that we talk about at the very end is very fact specific. So especially a lot of times people have questions about whether a case is a bias crime or is it just a bias incident. And it really does depend on the facts, the specific facts of the case. So you might have a situation where one fact might change slightly. So it changes from a bias crime then to a bias incident. And hopefully that'll make sense as we go forward. But I want to just throw those caveats out before we get started. So I'll talk a little bit about bias crimes first and what they are. So we have bias crimes in our state statutes. And what bias crimes are there are underlying crimes that occur and the motivation by the suspect, either partial motivation or their entire motivation for committing that crime, was because they have some sort of bias towards that victim, and specifically that victim belonging to a protected class. So you have the crime and then you have the added element of that bias. There are two different statutes. There's bias crime in the first degree, that's a C felony. It's obviously the more serious assaults. Menacing, so threats with a weapon, things of that nature. And then bias crime in the second degree are crimes where you're looking at property crimes or harassments where there's maybe offensive physical contact, but there's no injury to the other person. When we look at what the protected classes are for the state statute, we're looking at race, color, disability, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. And gender identity was one of the protected classes that was missing in the state statute up until recently. I think it was 2019 or 20 when they added that protected class to the state law. So we also have city code, which I know you're very well aware of Chapter 97. There is a section in Chapter 97 that's specific to bias crimes for city criminal code. So the criminal offenses for our SRC, for our city code crime, very much mimics bias crime in the second degree. So what types of crimes we're looking at there are, again, things like property damage or threats to property damage, harassments, so that that offensive physical contact without some kind of injury are all things that are potentially charged under the city code. The biggest difference, what you'll find, is that the list of protected classes for city code is much more expansive than for state law. So you'll see that there are some similarities, but I've highlighted here down below where the differences are. So you're looking at familial status, you're looking at age, marital status, a domestic partnership, and now we have housing status and also source of income. So those are additional protected classes. So additional community members could be if they were a victim of a crime and that motivation was because of one of those protected classes, they could potentially be a victim of this city code bias crime statute. One of the things that's different about the SRC, so our Salem Revised Code versus state code, is that we have certain city codes that aren't lodgeable at our county jail. And I think the reason for that, jail is responsible for handling all of the state statutes. And then also all of the cities within Marion County, a lot of them have their own city codes. And so they have to find ways to manage the amount of people coming in and out of their facility. So certain city codes that are lodgeable, and generally they mirror and are some of the maybe more serious ones. So you have a driving under the influence of intoxicants, you have a trespass, some of the ones that are fairly similar to the city code or to the state statute. As of right now, bias crime is not. So for if someone were to violate city code, this SRC for bias crime within Marion County, it would result in a criminal citation, but at this point we wouldn't be able to take them to the jail. Now, Polk County is a little bit different. Polk County does accept pretty much anything over there. So if it were to have occurred within the city, but in Polk County, they would accept those crimes. And I mention this just because when officers are trying to determine what crimes to charge somebody, we often will take into account. Obviously, we have to take into account whether there's probable cause for that crime, but then we also have to look at what's the seriousness, what's the likelihood that we can take somebody to jail and hold them accountable, what's the likelihood that it's going to be prosecuted. So those are just some of the things that we look at when we decide, are we going to charge the state statute or are we going to charge the city statute? For bias crimes, if you'll remember, I think I might have already talked about this in previous meetings, but when the police are out and we're investigating a bias crime, we're going to always ask ourselves 2 questions to determine whether it is an actual bias crime or is it a bias incident. So we looked at, was there a crime that was committed? Was there an underlying crime? So was there property damaged? Was there an assault? Was there a harassment? Was there a threat? And then most importantly, we have to ask what was the motivation of that offender, that suspect? Were they motivated? Was the partial or complete motivation for that crime because they believed that victim belonged to a protected class? And so it's interesting to note that it's only the suspect believing that the victim belonged to a protected class. So for example, my husband, he's Hispanic, but he very much looks Middle Eastern. So if somebody were to come up to him on the street, make a derogatory terms towards maybe they believed he was Islamic and attacked him and assaulted him, that still would qualify as a bias crime, even though he isn't Middle Eastern and he doesn't practice Islamic religion. The suspect believed that was the case and that was their motivation for that attack. So that's also what makes these crimes somewhat complicated to investigate, because it's not just a matter of determining if someone committed that crime. I can determine that somebody hit someone else fairly easily, you know, looking at video surveillance or witness statements, but trying to figure out why the person did what they did, sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult. You have to look at more things like, what did they say? Is there a particular time of year that might be significant to this protected class? You have to look at a lot of different other things as opposed to just, was there a crime committed or not? So other than bias crimes, we have bias incidents. And so bias incidents are differentiated between bias crimes because there really is no underlying criminal conduct, but bias is still present. And when I say no underlying criminal conduct, it doesn't necessarily mean that a crime hasn't occurred. So maybe there's damage to city property, and that damage to city property was graffiti, but there was no motivation, or there's no protected class. So that's one of the things that is difficult oftentimes, because you might have a school that gets has an incident of graffiti. Maybe there's a swastika on school property. So there's graffiti, but that school can't belong to a protected class. Government can't belong to a protected class. So it can't be charged as a bias crime because the victim doesn't belong to a protected class. The same thing with hate speech. So there you have, there are times when potentially hate is the law. It depends on what's said. So like I talked about, there are elements where when you make threats, certain types of threats, certain language could potentially be criminal. But in general, if somebody uses hate speech, hate words towards a protected class, it isn't always a bias crime. There is a potential that it would be a bias incident. So we still document it. We still want to make sure that we understand what kind of behaviors are happening in Salem. We would still refer that person to the Oregon State Bias Hotline, as well as the Human Rights Commission, but it couldn't be charged as a bias crime. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about freedom of speech. So remember, I talked about hate speech isn't always a crime. And so this particular case I found interesting because in state statute, there used to be a section that under harassment. So it was the harassment section of the statute, and it also mirrored in additional state statute where it talked about harassing someone could consider harassment if somebody publicly insulted another person by words or gestures, and that was likely to provoke a violent response. And so when we would look at that particular statute, we'd look at somebody yelling something so offensive that it ends up resulting in some kind of physical violence. So that's oftentimes how we would charge that. But in 2008, there was a court case where a driver was driving down the road and came upon another vehicle that had two individuals in it. Those individuals, two women, happened to be in a relationship. They had an altercation where the man in the vehicle made some comments at them, and then also had cut them off in traffic. And the women called the police and said, hey, this was really scary to us. What happened? The words that he used was scary. Him cutting us off was scary. And so the police actually arrested him on that state statute that he had by words and or his gestures had created that situation. And so unfortunately though, so he was actually convicted of that by the state, by the court, and it was appealed, and it went up to the Oregon Supreme Court, and they actually overturned the case and said that unfortunately that wasn't enough, that it was protected speech, that it wasn't enough that the words were said and that he made the maneuver in his car, that violence had to be more imminent than what the facts of the case were. So unfortunately, that's why oftentimes when we investigate cases of hate speech, we're unable to charge under a statute, because this case right here gave us a little bit of a barrier and a little bit of an explanation of really where does freedom of speech lie? When is it a crime? When isn't? So this one gave us a little bit of a roadmap of how to better understand and interpret that. In certain parameters, people can express their opinions and beliefs without violating the state law. So I included the statute up here. It's not really important. You don't have to read through it all. If you ever want to look through it, there's the Oregon Revised Statute. And then I also wanted to put menacing too. So when you look at bias crime in the first degree, that also includes threats that imply that violence is going to be imminent. And generally with menacing, you'll see that there's maybe a weapon or some other kind of threat that created that immediate fear that that person is going to cause serious physical injury to another person. So often we will see that in bias crimes as well. So you have a little bit of speech that's attached to a potential action. So that does end up turning into a menace, and then also a bias crime in the first degree is a potential criminal charge for that we often will see. So I thought if you want, we can do a couple of scenarios. Some of these are made up, some of them facts have been changed. So it gives you a good idea of what you kind of have to look at when deciding whether it's a bias crime or a bias incident. Some of these are a little bit vague, so it'll leave you wondering, ooh, I wish I could have more information. This is what you got. So we can try the first one. So situation is male and his girlfriend are out drinking at a bar, and the girlfriend's female friend is with them. Male gets upset with his girlfriend and actually begins a physical fight with her. They're in a physical altercation. The female friend inserts herself in between the two, trying to protect her friend. Male grabs on to the female friend, drags her to the ground, and actually begins strangling her. While strangling her, he does call her, use some derogatory terms, the anti-LGBTQ+, and she actually is gay. When we talk to the male says that she always interferes in their arguments, thinks that his girlfriend likes her more than him. He's really tired of it. And then he also, the officer uses derogatory anti-LGBTQ language towards the female victim. So, do you think it's a bias crime or do you think it's a bias incident? And I can only see Kelsey. So maybe, Kelsey, you can help me. Sorry, I just make her raise her hand.
You're okay. This is Kelsey. Does anyone have a guess if it's a bias crime or a bias incident? Zeke? Or I'm sorry, Ezekiel?
Zeke is fine. I would guess bias crime because there's definitely an assault that's happening, so there is the crime, and then there's also the slur and then the anti-queer slur being said at the same time, so it seems like both of those elements are there. based on that.
Yeah, for sure. So you definitely, yeah, you've got the assault for sure. And then you have not only him saying the derogatory term during the assault, but he makes the comment that he thinks that the friend likes his girlfriend. He actually makes the same comment to the officer. So I would definitely say that if an officer had this situation, they would more likely than not charge as a bias crime, just because not only do you have the slur, but you have just this other kind of history in the past, and then this just feeling that he ended up doing what he did. He ended up strangling her or hurting her because of potentially this feeling, anti-LGBTQ feeling. So yeah, no, I think that's good. Let me see, there's another one. Oh, this one I wanted to talk about. Okay, so male approaches a female driver stopped in a parking lot. He accuses her of cutting him off the road previously. So it's a road rage type incident. While he was yelling at her, he tells her she needs to go back to where she's from. You people don't know how to drive. I'm sick of having to pay for all of you people on welfare. And then he hits her car door with his foot and causes a fairly big dent. During the interview, the guy says this wasn't bias. He was tired of supporting all of them and wants stronger border protection. Female is Hispanic, but she's born here and raised, and actually has been here for, family's been here for several generations, but was extremely scared. Bias crime or bias incident? This one's kind of an easy one, I think. Maybe.
This is Marty. It sounds like a bias crime to me because there's property damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you have, that's the key, is you have him, obviously he's making these horrible statements, so he's pretty clearly showing that he has some pretty strong biases, but then he dents her car. So now you have the property damage, and potentially, depending on the scared part, you might have something where you could maybe say there was a menacing, especially aggressive, and she's smaller. Let's do this last one. Two females are walking down the street holding hands. A truck drive by, stops, backs up, and actually starts yelling at them things like calling them sinners, you'll burn in hell, and other kind of homophobic slurs. The street's really crowded with people. Two women are obviously very embarrassed, feel fearful for their lives, and then they feel they have to go into a business way from that individual. So what do you think about that one?
This is Greg. It's that one that in looking at the Oregon Supreme Court ruling, it's that question of whether it's free speech or not. It's terrible speech, but then there doesn't seem to be any threat of violence, or how would you pull from that a crime was committed? It's a bias incident from my view.
Yeah, no, you're right. And even though they feel scared, the individual's still in a car and they're on a sidewalk, he's on a street. So even if you say, well, maybe they're in fear for their lives, is it imminent? So you have to look at that. But yeah, you're right that even though it's horrible speech, not appropriate at all, is that something we could charge as a bias crime? More likely than not, it would not be something that we could charge. And we talked about symbols. Symbols can be bias crime depending on where they're at. So if you find a symbol maybe scratched into your car, painted on your sidewalk, that would definitely be a bias crime because it caused damage to your property, and that symbol more likely than not, it's probably going to be offensive to you, or some kind of writing would be offensive and indicate bias towards a protected class. Like I said before, if it's a park bench, school property, a government building, things like that, those are less likely to be able to charge with the bias crime because that victim, government can't be a protected class. So that does limit when we can. And I think
So
that was,
it's not excuse me, it's not bias, but is there a crime that was committed? Is there a charge that would come out of that? I mean, we're focusing on the bias side of that. My concern is whether how we potentially document somebody that has repeating behavior similar to that. Is there a way that we're, I mean, this is true with so many things that happen in society where somebody has behavior issues and we don't monitor that over the long term. So that's what would concern me, is that we're not creating a record, and sometimes being criminally charged, that definitely creates an official record. How does that work?
yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. That's why I'm so happy that we're documenting bias at the police department. So that is a way to track, even though it's not being tracked through the court system. We're tracking those incidents and how they have evolved, who was involved, so that and I will tell you that I've been contacted by looking for past cases because they're investigating a potential federal law violation on a particular location or of that individual. So those incidents could come into play at a later time. The state is also tracking it now with the state hotline. They don't track individuals or locations, so it's much more generic data, just trends. What are we seeing? What protected classes are we seeing being victimized? What locations, like what counties and cities? So it's much more generic, where with us, it is a little bit more specific. So that's a great question. And I think that's why it is important to have these documented so that we have an idea of what's going on in the city. So that was all I had.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Kathy?
Thank you, Debbie. That was very helpful. And one of the questions I actually had for you tonight was about the changes to Chapter 97, adding housing status to the, let's see, it's Section 97080, used to be called intimidation, but it's now bias. So my understanding, based on that and what you have said tonight, so if somebody were to tamper or interfere with property, for example, with intent to cause substantial inconvenience based on their perception of the person's housing status, that would be chargeable as a misdemeanor for a violation of that code. Is that right?
Correct. That would, yes, so correct. Now that housing is part of that protected class. So if you look at that statute, so it's tampering with property. If somebody went up and kicked somebody on the ground, didn't cause injury, but physical contact, that would apply. And there's a couple other potentials for criminal charges. But yes, you're correct. It has to be linked with bias. So obviously the person's motivation for doing that would have to be because, either partially or entirely, because they're biased against the person's housing status. So, but you are correct. That would be chargeable as a misdemeanor.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you again, Lieutenant. Really appreciate that. I learned a lot. So thank you. Our chair has returned. Angela, would you like to take this meeting over?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey, hello, everybody. Kelsey, if you don't mind me asking, where are we on the agenda?
Yeah, of course. We just went through number 4, section B.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So I think we can move on to our complaints / concerns of discrimination.
I think usually Gretchen's section, but she did not send me anything.
I know, I'm
So-
looking through too. I don't think I have anything in my papers either. So I don't think that there is anything for this meeting or this month.
Okay, yeah, no worries then. I think if there is anything for this month, Gretchen's probably going to update us in the December meeting. So thank you to both then. I think we move on to our task force and our project updates. We can start with awareness, and that is Kathy.
Thank you, Angelo. So we didn't have a meeting in October. We had a meeting that was scheduled, but the other members were not able to attend. So it was just Gretchen and I. We didn't have a quorum. So I don't have a lot to update. What we still have pending is finalizing the plan for the monthly column that we had talked about as a way to get the word out to the community about the Human Rights Commission and the work that we're doing. So that's still one of our projects. At our next meeting, which I believe is next Wednesday, we rescheduled it because of the Thanksgiving holiday. We're going to meet with Mary Ann Bradshaw, who was the professor with Western Oregon University, who worked with us, her class on the discrimination survey. And we're going to talk to her about things that we might be able to do differently in the future so that we get, so that the survey responses are things that we can, that are more actionable. You know, we find out now what people's perceptions are and their experiences, but we don't have a lot of specifics. And so there's kind of a feeling that there's not a lot we can do to fix the problems. And so we're going to have that conversation with her next week. And the only other thing I would mention is Chapter 97, the changes. And I think we may have talked about this last time, but City Council did approve those. So they become effective, I believe, November 23rd. Gretchen had said it was 30 days from when they pass it. And so that's when those become effective. And Gretchen and I think Lieutenant Aguilar have attended or will attend a couple of meetings of community groups to communicate those changes out there. So
Yes.
that's kind of in
Sorry.
progress.
I unmuted, but I didn't start my video.
Oh.
Yes, tomorrow I meet at I have a presentation at the UGM regarding the Chapter 97 changes. So I didn't know, I think she sent an invitation. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to be joining me. You don't have to, but I will be there.
I don't know how I had seen an email she sent out with the dates and times so far. I don't know who all she sent that to, but to my knowledge, I don't know. I'm not able to go, unfortunately. I would have liked to have gone to some of these meetings, but
That's
there's
okay.
scheduled times I couldn't be there. Thank you for doing that, though. So that was all I have. If anybody has any questions about what the Awareness Campaign Task Force is working on, let me know. If anybody is interested in joining the task force, we could always use more help. So keep it in mind. And Gretchen can send out that information about our meetings. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Kathy. I think we're on to 5B, which is LGBTQIA plus Intersectional Rights Task Force, and that is Kelsey.
Thank you, Angelo. All right, this is Kelsey, by the way. So we have a few things going on. It's mostly revolving around Trans Day of Remembrance. So that date is November 20th. That is a Sunday at 7 p.m. It's going to be in Laux Auditorium at the Salem Public Library. Everyone is welcome. We would love for members of the commission to come not only in attendance, but to be a greeter for the event. So welcoming people as they walk in. If you are interested in being a greeter, you can show up to the library at 6:45 p.m. that evening. I think that was it for Transgender Day of Remembrance. Should be a really a special event. So hopefully we can see you there. Just like Kathy was saying, we are also looking for members. We meet once a month on the every other week of the Human Rights Commission. You do not have to be a member of the commission to be a part of the LGBTQIA+ intersectional task force. So if you are interested in that, you can contact Gretchen. We would love to see you there. I think that's it. Kathy, do you remember anything else?
I think you covered it. The big
Okay.
one is the Transgender Day of Remembrance on the 20th. Yeah, it's coming up pretty quick.
I know.
I actually have a question, if you guys don't mind. It's Hamadi.
Yeah.
Would you be able to email out the details to that? So just that way I actually have them, because if you tell me, I will totally forget. So.
Yes. I can either have Gretchen send it out or I can send it out. Absolutely.
Yeah, Angela here. Kelsey, and I agreed to MC the event, but I don't have anything yet. So is that going to be something that I'll get soon, or?
Yes, I'm working on slideshows for the event. So yes, I will get those to you, Angela. I appreciate you reminding me.
Yeah, no worries. And then for time, what time do you want me to be there?
If you also want to show up at 6:45, that would be swell.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Laura Fouts. Did you say for people that want to greet is 6:45 also?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. And please invite your friends, family, members of the community to this event.
This is Kathy. Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's also going to be it's going to be a hybrid event. So if people can't attend in person, they should still be able to watch. I don't know if it's via YouTube, but that's my understanding as well. So, and I think there's a flyer, there's an email, something that went out that I'm sure Gretchen can forward to everybody else that has that information.
Thank you for that reminder, Kathy. Yes, it will be live streamed, and we'll get the poster out, and it will have the QR code and the link to the live stream.
Hey, Angela here. Any other questions for Kelsey? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Kelsey. We'll move on to our staff updates.
Hi all. So the one thing Gretchen left on my little sheet is to remind you guys that looks like you guys are going to be transitioning to being both in person and Zoom for your December meeting. So it sounds like it's going to be a hybrid. So kind of exciting. So that'll be kind of different and nice to have more of an in-person. So option for people. So just wanted to remind you guys of that. So if you do join in person, build in a little bit of that commute time. So yeah, that's the one thing she wanted me to remind you guys of. So that's the only staff update I have.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we also have the community calendar, but I've heard that we don't have anything. I do want to give a special shout out to Hope for finding any events, and thank you for taking on that task.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all.
Yeah, I think finally we can go to our member remarks and our announcements. Does anybody have anything that they would like to say? Yeah, so I'll say some comments. If you can believe it, next month is our last meeting of the year. It is December. And I've been saying it for months, but now it's a reality. We have elections next month for offices, for chair and vice chair. Me and Krista will not be rerunning, and it's actually my last meeting next meeting because I will be leaving the commission early. But yeah, I've heard some interest, but I would like to hear again, who is interested in running for any of the offices? Okay, Kelsey's interested in, Kelsey, you're interested in vice chair, right? Okay, thank you. And then I've heard about chair for Hamadi. Is that correct, Hamadi? I don't know if he's still. Oh, there
Yeah,
he is.
that is correct. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries, Hamadi. Yeah, it's great. Any other interests in running?
Angelo, could you
Yes.
describe, maybe in Krista too, this is Kelly, sorry, the role, and maybe you guys have already talked about this, so forgive me, but kind of what your guys' role is, so in case people might have an interest, or people are watching and they might have an interest, maybe even joining, kind of what your duties are as part of this.
Yeah, I think I'll start, Angela, here. So there is a lot of background stuff. So, we approve meetings a week in advance. I am the point person for any media. So, I mean, if you search my name, for the Salem Reporter, Statesman's Journal, there's a couple of articles that I've been interviewed for various things. So, you're the main point person. And then obviously if I can't do it, Krista would do it, or whoever the vice chair is. Also, obviously these meetings is a big one. I think that's pretty much it for the guidelines for it. Obviously the chair can pretty much set the agenda, do all that. But I don't know if Krista, you want to add anything else to that?
I believe that Gretchen has already shared kind of the duties of chair and vice chair. If anybody was interested, we can email that description to you.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. But yeah, it's pretty, at first it seems like a really hard job, but it's really not. It's pretty, it does take a couple more, obviously, outside work, because you have to be on top of emails and stuff, hopefully. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. That's it. And I think any member of the commission would be great at either roles. So yeah, I would think about it, but at this point, I think if there's nobody else, I think we have our clear, I would say, quote unquote front runners for the positions. And at the December meeting, I will just I will call the election, we'll vote, and then whoever wins those two elections will start in January for the January meeting. Now, I think another thing that the chair, vice chair do is appoint the chairs for our task forces. That's the second thing that they do. I don't know if Kelsey's voted in as vice chair. I don't know if she would like to continue being chair of the LGBT Sexual Rights Task Force. If you certainly can, there's no rule against it, but I guess you would appoint yourself in that situation. But yeah, that's what also the chair and vice chair do. But yeah, please consider also joining any of the task forces. They do need more members. And again, I would encourage outside community members to join those because you won't have to be a part of the commission to join those. And those task forces generally take a little less commitment than the full commission. So I mean, I'd encourage people to do that. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all I got. We'll see you in person or virtual next meeting. And if nobody else has any comments, I'll adjourn this meeting for now. Have a good night, everybody.